Hey YouTube, today we're going to be talking about whether Makita's newest high torque impact driver can keep pace with the strongest from Milwaukee and DeWalt. So let's get into that on Tinker with Tools. Now when it comes to flagship impact drivers, I really feel like over the years they either fit into one of two possible camps. The first being those that are really focused on power, performance, and speed. And on the other side, you have those that are focused a bit more on refinement and being nice to use. And over the years, I would say Makita largely fits into that being nicer to use while definitely sacrificing power and performance, especially against some of the strongest impact drivers that are out there. But Makita seems to be a little bit more focused on changing that, or at least offering a solution in their lineup to kind of go more toe-to-toe with those impact drivers. And that's where this comes in. This is Makita's XGT high torque impact driver. It's going to be modeled GTD04. Here where I live, I'll have the other model number on it as well. But this came out in the last few weeks, and it is a bit of a different impact driver. Now, in terms of size, it is a larger impact driver. That's because basically they have taken their compact XGT impact wrench and kind of converted it over to an impact driver. Now, a lot more goes into that than just swapping a square drive for a collet, because there is some different tuning that is happening here in terms of the torque figures, the speed, and the number of impacts and that sort of thing. But in my early testing, comparing this to Makita impact drivers, it did see a performance bump, and it really did start to feel like a much stronger impact driver. Now, that being said, it still does retain a lot of the nice to use features for certain, but this is not a flagship model by any means. What I mean by that is it doesn't have every single mode that you're used to getting on a Makita impact driver, but it still does retain 4 speed modes and 1 assist mode. It doesn't have the most impressive light with just a pair of LEDs sitting right above the trigger. It lacks the quick shift button that we've kind of gotten to know on impact drivers. And like I said, it is a larger, heavier impact driver, especially than what we have been getting previously with Makita's impact drivers. So what I want to be able to answer today is, how does it compare to these other impact drivers? Is it worth considering if you're looking for a big, strong impact driver, or has Makita missed the mark again and really just doesn't pack the performance? Now, let's talk about what we're going to be comparing it against, because I've got 2 impact drivers from DeWalt and Milwaukee that we're going to be talking about today. Now, the reason why specifically I've chosen these 3 impact drivers is because they're all going to be running on the same size battery, and they're all going to have a tablet cell battery. So down on the DeWalt and the Milwaukee, that is going to be an 8 amp hour tablet cell, the power pack battery from DeWalt. And over here on Milwaukee, this is going to be the 8 amp hour Forge battery. Now on the XGT, obviously being a 40 volt tool, that is going to be a 4 amp hour battery up on that higher voltage, but they all do feature the same total watt hours in the battery. Now first up, the DeWalt, this is model DCF860, and they came out with this last year, and it is what they dubbed their high torque impact driver. They had released a number of models over the year with the same level of performance, in my opinion, and then they finally gave us one that really pushed the performance a little bit. They've got a claimed 2,500 inch-pounds of torque in this model, did have higher RPMs, and just overall much more performance than what we were used to seeing from a DeWalt impact driver. With Milwaukee, we're going to be talking about their Gen 4 M18 Fuel impact driver, model 295320. Now this one was basically a revision of their already successful Gen 3 impact driver. It still featured 2,000 inch-pounds of torque, but it did feature maybe a little bit more speed in terms of the overall drive. Now the Makita is, like I said, the newest one on the market, and it features 2,040 inch-pounds of torque and an overall pretty good performance in my early testing, but we're obviously going to see how it compares to these 2. Now, in terms of speed modes, over here on the DeWalt, you just have 3 basic speed modes, just 1, 2, 3. There's no special assist modes. Now, over on the Milwaukee, they do have 3 traditional speed modes, and then that mode for metal fasteners, that is something that they've had on their impact driver for a long time. And then on the Makita, that's where you get the 4 traditional speed modes, speeds 1 through 4. And then you also do have that metal fastener mode as well. DeWalt is going to have the best light, in my opinion. They have the 3 sections of LEDs. And overall, this is about as close as you can get to that halo or ring style light that we've seen on other impact drivers. And it does provide really good light. Milwaukee did step up their game with this one, going up to the 3 LEDs, but overall, it's not the most impressive light that we have on impact drivers today. It's sufficient, but definitely not class leading in terms of that. That's one place where Makita kind of misses out a little bit because they do have the older style, and overall, it's not terrible, but it's definitely not going to be the best that is out there on the table today. None of that's really going to matter if the performance of this one just doesn't even come close to matching these two impact drivers. And so that's where we're going to go launch into the performance testing and then come back and give you some conclusions about these impact drivers. All right, in terms of performance testing, when I purchased this Makita impact driver, I was not under the impression that it was going to come out here and be the biggest, strongest, fastest impact driver. In fact, I actually had some pretty tepid expectations of the Makita on the whole. I did purchase it because I was curious about it, but I wasn't expecting it to be just a really strong impact driver. And that was kind of the opposite of expectation with something like this DeWalt. when DeWalt finally released an impact driver that just had ultra high performance figures, it's like, finally, DeWalt, let's go ahead and get it out. And in terms of testing, when this one first came out, it was competitive with these bigger, stronger, faster impact drivers. Now, I did some of this performance testing a week ago. In that testing a week ago, this DeWalt just did not fare that well. Now, after doing the testing, I looked down at the battery, specifically this 8 amp hour power pack, and I noticed that it was actually down on 2 bars at the end of the testing. So even though it had been showing full bars at the beginning of the testing, it clearly was not charged up as much as I thought it was. And it seemed to suffer the performance on this, where the Makita even beat it last week. But after charging all 3 of them fresh today for the video, the DeWalt did perform the best in terms of the performance testing. It, in just about every test, was the strongest, fastest, felt the most performant for sure, and it really just felt different today. The Milwaukee seemed to fluctuate a little bit more. It just didn't have its best day today. I do have other videos where it has performed the best. And so definitely competitive impact drivers, but not right there at the top. So then that brings us to the Makita. Like I said, I was under the impression that this was going to be the biggest and strongest. I mostly was just looking for it to feel competitive and when you're actually using it. And that is definitely the case. I mean, you can tell that it's not always going to be the fastest drive. Feels strong, feels like it can do the task, and definitely is a tool that I think feels like it fits more with these, even though it doesn't have quite as blazing a performance. Now, the one place where it does stand out is today I did the DeWalt testing first, then the Milwaukee, and then I moved to the Makita. And on the first couple of fasteners with this Makita, it is apparent just how much more smooth it is than either of these impact drivers. It just feels like they've got something sorted out really well. It just doesn't transfer as much vibration, even though it does still shake sometimes on those fasteners. It is just overall a much more smooth experience than what you're getting from either of these tools. I already felt like it had the best ergonomics in terms of how comfortable the handle is, how nice the trigger is. When you use it back to back with these tools, it feels like it's on another level with its refinement. So now, when we start to talk about some of the conclusions of this, is if it no longer truly embarrasses itself in terms of how it compares to the biggest, strongest impact drivers, and it is still really nice to use, that's where this starts to make sense for some people. I know that there's going to be a lot of people that hate Makita that would never give it a shot, and there's definitely some things about it that bug me, especially in my market, but it at least now feels like it belongs doing some of these tasks that you would traditionally grab one of these bigger, stronger impact drivers for. So then in price, Milwaukee is the cheapest bare tool, $179, followed by DeWalt, and then up here with the Makita, $234 in the North American pricing. So where I'm located in the United States, by far the most expensive, and it feels overpriced in my opinion. When you go to other places though, that pricing is not always ordered that way. In fact, in Europe, all 3 of them relatively the same pricing. Over in Australia, for example, though, the DeWalt was the cheapest, the Makita the second, Milwaukee was the most expensive. So it's just going to depend on where you go of the regional pricing that you're going to get with these tools. Here in the US market though, the pricing is going to be a major hindrance for this tool. The kit price gets even more ridiculous because I think you can get the kit for this at $329, $349. This one is almost $500. And so pricing, especially in the United States, it's just really out of whack, and I don't think people are going to consider it. But just in terms of which impact driver I'm going to pick up and which one I'm going to use, the nice to use factor here really does outweigh, and it doesn't ever feel like you're pushing it beyond what it's capable of. It's just not going to be the quickest in terms of the overall drive. So there you have it, kind of a rundown of these top strong impact drivers. Go ahead and let me know what you think down in the comments below. Which one of these would you run, or would you run something else like the Flex? Now, if you like this sort of video, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Make sure to turn on notifications so you get notified when I put out a new video. Now, as always, thank you for all the support. Have a happy holidays this season. And until next time, I'll catch you on Tinker with Tools.